I never thought marriage would be easy. I knew relationships required effort, patience, and compromise. But when I married Adam, I believed we had something strong enough to withstand anything. In the beginning, everything was perfect. Adam and I had been dating for 3 years before he proposed. He was kind, supportive, and always made me laugh. Our wedding was beautiful, small but intimate, just close friends and family. I thought we were stepping into a happy life together. But I underestimated one thing: his mother, Diana. At first, I thought she was just a little over-involved. She called Adam every day, sometimes multiple times. I didn't think much of it. After all, they were close, and I didn't want to be the kind of wife who came between her husband and his family. But it didn't stop at phone calls. Diana had an opinion about everything. The way I decorated our apartment? Wrong. The way I cooked? Also wrong. Even the way I folded laundry, for God's sake. "Sweetheart," she would say, her voice dripping with condescension, "I know you're trying, but Adam likes his shirts folded this way. I've been doing it for him his whole life." I tried to ignore it. I told myself she just wanted to help. But the more I tried to be patient, the more invasive she became. She started showing up unannounced. I would come home from work and find her in our kitchen, reorganizing our pantry. One time, she even threw out spices I had just bought because they were too exotic for Adam's taste. And Adam? He didn't see the problem. "She's just trying to help, babe," he would say, dismissing my frustration with a quick kiss on the forehead. "She means well." I wanted to scream. It wasn't just about the house. It was about the way she talked to me, like I was some clueless outsider who had invaded her son's life. The worst part? The constant comparison. Adam loved my chicken pot pie growing up. "Maybe I should give you the recipe." Adam always preferred his coffee with cream. "Are you sure you're making it right?" I felt like I was being tested, constantly measured against this impossible standard of perfection she had created. And then things got worse. One evening, Adam and I planned a quiet dinner at home. Just the two of us. I made lasagna, lit some candles, and even put on a nice dress. It was supposed to be romantic. Halfway through dinner, the doorbell rang. It was Diana. "Surprise!" she beamed, holding a casserole dish. I made Adam's favorite. I forced a smile and let her in, but inside, I was fuming. She stayed the entire night, chatting with Adam like I wasn't even there. Later, when I told Adam how frustrated I was, he just shrugged. "She's my mom, Sarah. What do you want me to do? Kick her out?" "Yes," I snapped. "Or at least set some boundaries." He looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "You're overreacting," he said. "She's not doing anything wrong." I felt like I was losing my mind. Then came the breaking point. A few weeks later, Adam and I had our first big fight. I don't even remember what started it. Something small, like forgetting to take out the trash. But it escalated fast. We were both yelling, and in the middle of it, he blurted out, "Maybe my mom was right about you." The room went silent. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice shaking. He looked like he regretted it instantly, but the damage was done. "What has she been saying about me, Adam?" He ran a hand through his hair and sighed. "It's nothing. She thinks you don't appreciate her. That you don't understand our family." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Our marriage was barely a year old, and already, I felt like an outsider in my own home. I didn't know what to do. But one thing was clear: Diana wasn't just a problem. She was a threat to my marriage. And Adam? He was too blind to see it. I used to believe that marriage was about partnership, about building a life together with someone who had your back no matter what. But with each passing day, it felt like I was sharing my marriage with a third person, Diana. She wasn't just involved, she was in control. And Adam, my husband, refused to see it. It started small, like everything does. A suggestion here, a harmless comment there. But soon it wasn't just about what we ate or how I folded the laundry. It was about every aspect of our lives. One afternoon, I came home from work to find our living room completely rearranged. The couch had been moved to the opposite wall, new curtains hung over the windows, and an enormous gaudy floral rug covered the hardwood floor. It wasn't just different, it was hideous. Diana sat on the couch, sipping tea like she owned the place. "Surprise!" she beamed, gesturing around the room. I thought it could use a little warmth. I stood frozen in the doorway, gripping my bag so hard my knuckles turned white. Where did all this come from? "Oh, I went shopping this morning. Adam said you were thinking about redecorating, so I thought I'd help." Help? I felt like screaming. I had never mentioned redecorating. Not once. Adam walked in a minute later, completely unfazed. "Hey babe, doesn't it look great? Mom has such an eye for this stuff." I swallowed my anger. "You let her do this without asking me?" He frowned. "She was just trying to be nice." I wanted to throw that ridiculous floral rug out the window. But instead, I clenched my jaw and forced a nod. "It's different." Diana smiled, completely oblivious to the tension in the room. "I knew you'd love it." That was just the beginning. A week later, I discovered she had been digging into our finances. I was balancing our checkbook when I noticed some unfamiliar charges, a couple of large withdrawals I didn't recognize. When I asked Adam, he barely looked up from his phone. "Oh, Mom needed some money for a home project." I figured we could help her out. I stared at him. "Adam, that was over $2,000. So what?" "She's family." Family. The word felt like a leash tightening around my throat. And you didn't think to ask me? He sighed, rubbing his temples like I was the one being unreasonable. Sarah, it's not a big deal. She's done so much for us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Done so much for us? Adam, she is controlling our lives. He rolled his eyes. You're overreacting again. Overreacting. That was his favorite word these days. I wanted to fight, to make him understand how suffocating it felt to have his mother constantly invading our marriage. But I was exhausted. So I let it go. That was my mistake. A month later, she took things even further. One evening, Adam came home excited. Mom planned a trip for us. I blinked. A trip? Yeah, a weekend getaway to a cabin in the mountains. She already booked it. My stomach twisted. She booked it without asking us? She just wanted to do something nice, he said, grinning like an idiot. I folded my arms. Adam, I can't just take time off work last minute. Already handled. Mom called your office and spoke to your boss. She said you needed some quality time with your husband. My blood ran cold. She what? Relax, babe. She meant well. I grabbed my phone, ready to call my boss and explain that my mother-in-law had no right to interfere in my career. But before I could dial, Diana strolled in, completely at ease, like she lived here. You're welcome, sweetheart, she said cheerfully. I knew you'd never take time off, so I did it for you. I couldn't hold back anymore. Diana, you had no right to do that. Her smile faltered, just for a second, before she sighed dramatically. I was only trying to help. You work so much, Sarah. Adam misses you. I turned to my husband, expecting him to finally say something, anything, to defend me. But he just shrugged. She's not wrong. I felt something inside me snap. This wasn't just meddling anymore. This was control. And Adam was letting it happen. As if that wasn't enough, Diana soon began making comments about our future children. You'll be such a great mother, Sarah, she told me one evening. Of course, I assume you'll stay home with the baby. A child needs their mother, not some stranger raising them. I nearly choked on my drink. Excuse me. Oh, don't worry, she continued, completely ignoring my shock. Adam makes enough for both of you. There's no need for you to keep working once the baby comes. I hadn't even agreed to have kids yet, and she was already planning my resignation. I turned to Adam, desperate for him to shut her down, but he only smiled. She has a point, babe. We should start thinking about the future. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had ended up here. Diana had taken over our home, our finances, our time, and now, she was trying to take over my future. And the worst part? Adam was letting her. I couldn't do it anymore. For months, I had swallowed my anger, let things slide, told myself that I was overreacting. But I wasn't. Diana was controlling my life, my marriage, my future, and Adam was letting her. So I decided to stop being quiet. One evening, after another exhausting day of dodging Diana's calls and pretending everything was fine, I told Adam we needed to talk. Okay, he said casually, settling onto the couch. He barely looked up from his phone. I took a deep breath. I need you to listen to me, Adam. Really listen. He sighed but put his phone down. All right. What's wrong now? No. Like this was just another one of my silly complaints. I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. Your mother is ruining our marriage. His eyebrows shot up. Excuse me. You heard me, I said, my voice shaking. She's in every part of our lives. She controls how we decorate. She spends our money without asking. She booked us a trip without our permission. She even called my job to arrange time off for me. Adam, this isn't normal. She was trying to do something nice. I slammed my hand on the coffee table, surprising even myself. Stop saying that. This isn't nice, Adam. This is control. And you're letting her do it. His face darkened. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I felt a lump rise in my throat. Nothing? Adam, I feel like a stranger in my own marriage. I feel like I'm losing you. For a moment, he looked uncertain. But then his face hardened. Look, I get that my mom can be a little much sometimes, but that doesn't mean she's ruining our marriage. She's manipulating you, I whispered. And if you don't start setting boundaries, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Silence. Then he scoffed. So what? You're giving me an ultimatum. I stared at him, my heart pounding. I'm asking you to choose your wife over your mother. He didn't answer. And in that moment, I knew I had lost. The next day, Diana escalated. I don't know what Adam told her, but she must have known I was pushing back, because suddenly, she wasn't just interfering. She was turning people against me. It started with small things. Adam's sister, Rachel, stopped returning my calls. His cousin, Emily, who had always been friendly, suddenly became cold and distant. Even Adam's best friend, Mark, started acting weird around me. Then the rumors started. A neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, an older woman who gossiped about everyone, stopped me in the grocery store one afternoon. Sarah, she said, lowering her voice, I just wanted to say that I'm so sorry about what you're going through. I frowned. What do you mean? Her eyes darted around like she was making sure no one was listening. I heard about, the difficulties in your marriage. My stomach twisted. Difficulties. She hesitated. Diana mentioned that you've been struggling. That you might be having some mental health issues. I nearly dropped the carton of eggs in my hand. She said what? Mrs. Callahan flinched. Oh dear, I didn't mean to upset you. I just thought you should know what people are saying. I stood there, my entire body shaking. Diana was painting me as unstable. And Adam? He had no idea. That night, I confronted him again. You need to tell your mother to stop spreading lies about me. He frowned. What are you talking about? She's telling people I'm unstable, Adam. I yelled. That I'm struggling with my mental health. He blinked. I'm sure she didn't mean it like that. I laughed bitterly. You always have an excuse for her, don't you? Sarah, she's just worried about you. Worried? I took a step closer, my hands trembling. Adam, she is turning your entire family against me. He rubbed his face. Look, maybe if you tried to get along with her. I've been trying. I screamed. But she doesn't want peace, Adam. She wants control. He exhaled slowly, as if I was exhausting him. I think you need to calm down. I felt my stomach drop. That was it. That was the moment I realized my husband was never going to choose me. Desperate, I suggested therapy. At first, Adam resisted. We don't need therapy. We just need to work on our communication. I almost laughed. Adam, you don't listen to me. You listen to your mother. Eventually, he agreed. Probably because he thought the therapist would side with him. Her name was Dr. Avery, and from the moment we walked into her office, I knew she saw right through our marriage. She was calm but direct, and she asked the kind of questions Adam wasn't prepared for. Adam, she said during our second session, what would happen if you told your mother no? He blinked. What do you mean? If you told her that she couldn't make decisions for you. If you set a boundary and stuck to it. What would happen? Adam shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. She'd be upset, I guess. Dr. Avery nodded. And does that scare you? I just don't want to hurt her feelings. I spoke up, my voice barely above a whisper. What about my feelings, Adam? He didn't answer. Dr. Avery sighed. Adam, I need you to understand something. Your mother is exerting control over your marriage. If you don't set boundaries, this relationship will not survive. It was the first time someone had said it out loud. And for the first time, I saw fear in Adam's eyes. After therapy, he was quiet. When we got home, he sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Finally, he said, I think I need to talk to my mom. A flicker of hope sparked in my chest. But then the next day, he came home late. Where were you? I asked. He hesitated. With Mom. I felt my stomach twist. And he exhaled. She's really hurt, Sarah. She thinks you don't like her. I stared at him in disbelief. That's what she took from this? Not that she's overstepping? Not that she's hurting our marriage. She says she's just trying to help, he mumbled. And that was when I knew. Adam wasn't going to change. Not really. Because no matter what, Diana would always come first. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could live with that. I didn't expect things to change overnight. After our sessions with Dr. Avery, I had hoped, prayed, that Adam would finally start seeing what I had been trying to tell him for so long. That his mother wasn't just helping. She was manipulating. She was controlling. She was suffocating our marriage. But hope is a dangerous thing. For a few days, Adam seemed different. He was distant, quiet, thoughtful. He wasn't running to answer every one of Diana's calls, and he wasn't immediately shutting me down when I brought her up. And then one evening, he came home pale and tense. I was in the kitchen making dinner when he walked in. He set his keys down on the counter and just stood there, gripping the edge of the granite like he was trying to keep himself upright. I turned off the stove. What's wrong? He exhaled sharply, his jaw tight. Mom gave me an ultimatum. A chill ran down my spine. What? He finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before, fear. She told me I have to choose, he said slowly. Her or you? I put my hands on the counter to steady myself. What did you say? He swallowed. I told her I needed time to think. I stared at him, feeling like the ground beneath me had just collapsed. Time to think. My voice was barely a whisper. Sarah, this is my mother, he said, his voice laced with frustration. I can't just cut her off. I felt my body go rigid. I never asked you to cut her off, Adam. I asked you to set boundaries. There's a difference. She doesn't see it that way. Of course she doesn't, I snapped. Because to her, any boundary is an attack. He rubbed his temples. I just need some time. Time for what? I asked, my voice rising. To decide whether you want to be married to me or married to your mother? His face twisted in anger. That's not fair, Sarah. I let out a bitter laugh. Fair? Fair? Adam, your mother just gave you a choice between your wife and her. And instead of defending me, instead of telling her she was out of line, you said you needed time. He flinched. I'm done. The words came out before I even had time to process them. Adam froze. What? I inhaled sharply, trying to steady my voice. I can't do this anymore. I need space. I need to think. I'm going to stay somewhere else for a while. His eyes widened. Sarah, no wait. But I was already moving, already walking past him, already heading to our bedroom to pack. And for the first time since I married Adam, I felt like I was taking control of my own life. I stayed at my friend Melissa's apartment for a while. Melissa had been my best friend since college. Sharp, brutally honest, and fiercely protective. The moment I walked through her door with a suitcase, she didn't ask questions. She just poured me a glass of wine and let me collapse onto her couch. So, what did that witch do now? She asked after I finally finished telling her everything. I let out a hollow laugh. She gave Adam an ultimatum. And instead of choosing me, he told her he needed time. Melissa rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Of course he did. God, Sarah, I love you, but you've been married to a walking red flag. I groaned, rubbing my temples. I just thought, I don't know. I thought he'd wake up. Men like Adam don't wake up unless they're forced to, she said bluntly. You leaving? That's the first real consequence he's ever faced. I knew she was right, but it didn't make it hurt any less. Meanwhile, Diana wasted no time making me the villain. 2 days after I left, I started getting texts from Adam's family. His sister Rachel sent a long-winded message about how selfish I was for abandoning my husband. His cousin Emily accused me of tearing Adam apart. Even his Aunt Lisa, who I barely spoke to, chimed in, saying I should be ashamed for making Adam choose between his mother and his wife. I didn't respond. But Melissa? She grabbed my phone, typed out a single message, and hit send before I could stop her. Adam's mother gave him the ultimatum. Not me. But thank you for proving how deep her manipulation runs. God, I loved her. Then, 3 days after I left, Adam showed up at Melissa's door. It was nearly midnight when we heard the knock. Melissa peered through the peephole, groaned, and then turned to me. It's him. I took a deep breath. Let him in. Adam looked awful. His hair was a mess, his eyes were bloodshot, and he had the look of a man who hadn't slept in days. He barely made it 2 steps inside before he said, I'm sorry. I folded my arms. For what? His lips parted, but he hesitated, like he wasn't sure where to begin. For not standing up for you. For letting my mother manipulate me. For making you feel like you weren't my priority. I swallowed, my heart pounding. And what changed? He ran a hand through his hair. You left. And for the first time, I actually sat with the idea of losing you. And it terrified me. Melissa made a noise like she was trying not to gag. I'm gonna go to my room before I throw up, she muttered before disappearing. Adam took another step closer. I told my mother that she doesn't get to control my marriage. That if she can't respect my wife, she won't be a part of my life. I inhaled sharply. And what did she say? His face darkened. She lost it. Screamed at me, said I was betraying her, said you had poisoned me against her. She actually cried, Sarah. Real, manipulative tears. He let out a bitter laugh. And for the first time I didn't care. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign that he wasn't serious. But he was. I could see it in his eyes. Do you mean it? I whispered. He nodded. I do. And I know it's late. And I know I messed up. But if you'll still have me, I swear to you, I'll never let her come between us again. For the first time in months, I let out a breath I hadn't even realized I'd been holding. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope after all. Trust isn't something that comes back overnight. Even though Adam had finally stood up to his mother, even though he had chosen me, I couldn't just pretend everything was fine. Too much had happened. Too many times I had begged him to see what Diana was doing to our marriage, only for him to brush me off, gaslight me, and make me feel like I was the problem. I needed to be sure this wasn't temporary. That he wouldn't slip back into old habits the moment Diana turned on the waterworks. So when Adam asked me to come home, I told him the truth. I need time. His face fell, but he nodded. I understand. For the next few weeks, we rebuilt things slowly. Adam visited me at Melissa's apartment. We went on dates, talked about everything except his mother, and just tried to enjoy each other's company again. It felt almost like we were dating again, before marriage, before Diana, before everything had spiraled out of control. But there was still one major obstacle, Diana herself. She wasn't going to back off without a fight. And that fight came sooner than I expected. One evening, Adam showed up at Melissa's looking drained. He dropped onto the couch and rubbed his temples. She showed up at my office today. I sat up straighter. What? Yep. Walked right past the receptionist like she owned the place and barged into my office. He let out a bitter laugh. She was crying. Full-on sobbing. Told me she was losing me, that I was choosing you over my own mother, that she had sacrificed everything for me. Melissa, who was sitting in the kitchen, snorted. Classic narcissist playbook. I ignored her and focused on Adam. What did you say? He sighed. I told her the truth. That this isn't about choosing between her and you. It's about respect. That if she wanted to be in my life, she needed to respect my marriage. And if she couldn't do that, I wouldn't have her in my life at all. My heart clenched. And she called me ungrateful. Told me she should have never raised me the way she did if this was how I was going to repay her. He shook his head. Then she stormed out. I stared at him, waiting for the usual guilt to creep in, for the usual doubt to show on his face. But it didn't. For the first time, Adam wasn't second-guessing himself. I reached over and took his hand. I'm proud of you. His fingers tightened around mine. I just want my wife back. And for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could trust him again. A week later, I moved back home. It felt strange at first, like I was stepping into a place that was both familiar and foreign at the same time. The ugly floral rug Diana had forced on us was gone, and I noticed small things, like how Adam had rearranged the kitchen back to how I liked it. It wasn't perfect. There was still a long way to go. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like this was my home again. We started therapy again, not just for our marriage, but for Adam himself. Dr. Avery helped him unpack years of emotional manipulation, years of being conditioned to prioritize his mother's happiness over his own. And I could see it in him, how hard it was to deprogram himself from the guilt she had ingrained in him since childhood. One day, after a particularly heavy session, he admitted, "I think I was afraid of losing her more than I was afraid of losing you." I flinched, but I appreciated the honesty. And now, he squeezed my hand. Now I know what's worth fighting for. Diana, of course, didn't go down quietly. She tried everything. At first, it was the silent treatment. Weeks passed without a single text, call, or unwanted visit. Then suddenly she was back, acting as if nothing had happened. "I just miss you, sweetheart," she cooed one evening when Adam finally answered one of her calls. Can't a mother miss her son? But Adam didn't fall for it. "If you miss me, Mom, then respect my wife. Respect my marriage. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about." She cried. She guilt-tripped. She even tried using other family members to pressure him. But Adam stood firm. And slowly, Diana began to back off. With her presence fading, Adam and I started making real plans for our future. One evening, we sat on the couch, wine glasses in hand, talking about everything we had put on hold for so long. "Do you ever think about moving?" Adam asked. I blinked. Moving? Yeah. A fresh start. Just us. A place that's ours, without all the baggage attached to it. The idea sent a thrill through me. "Where would we go?" He shrugged. "Somewhere far enough that my mother can't just drop by anymore." I laughed. "Now that sounds like a dream." We started looking at houses the following week. Then, one evening, as if the universe wanted to test us one last time, Diana showed up. I opened the door, and there she was, standing on our porch with a forced smile. "Sarah," she said sweetly. "May I come in?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face. But instead, I stepped aside. She walked in, looking around, as if assessing how much influence I had over the house. Then she sighed dramatically. "I just wanted to say, I was wrong." I froze. "Excuse me." She turned to me, her expression carefully calculated. "I may have overstepped. I just love my son so much, you know? I only wanted what was best for him." I crossed my arms. "And you thought that was controlling every part of his life?" A flicker of annoyance crossed her face but disappeared quickly. "I just wanted him to be happy." I tilted my head. "And what if his happiness includes me?" She pursed her lips, then sighed again. "Then I suppose I'll have to accept that." It wasn't a real apology. It wasn't even close. But it was the best I was going to get. And honestly, I didn't care anymore. Diana didn't have power over me. Not anymore. A month later, Adam and I signed the papers for our new house. As we stood in our empty living room, boxes piled around us, I looked at him and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. He wrapped his arms around me and kissed my forehead. "We did it." I smiled. "Yeah, we did. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But we had fought for this, fought for us. And for the first time, I truly believed we had won."